Coming in at 5, The Plague Dogs. Released back in 1982, this animation follows two dogs who escape from a laboratory and are hunted as possible carriers of the bubonic plague. Directed by Martin Rosen, this film is straight up triggering, and is a ruthless film that does not shy away from cruelty towards animals in the pursuit of scientific knowledge. The film has a very fitting PG-13 rating. Considering its violent imagery and thematic elements, I mean, the film literally kicks off with a drowning dog in a science lab get resuscitated by siphoning the water out of his lungs. This is a kids film, guys. Yeah, now the film itself sets out to criticize cruelty towards animals as well as animal experimentation, making this movie a very difficult watch indeed. However, saying that, it is perhaps one of the two movies on our list that might actually be okay for younger viewers to watch, but I can't promise they won't be traumatized for life. I mean, the ending has real Old Yeller vibes, but is way more ambiguous. The message is clear though, and its delivery truly harrowing. Coming in at 4, Watership Down.
Incredible courage and mortal fear.
A terrible thing is coming.
What do you mean?
The field.
Yet another Martin Rosen film on our list. This film is perhaps slightly more popular, but honestly just as depressing. Released in 1978, Watership Down follows a group of rabbits who are fleeing their doomed warren and face many dangers to find and protect their new home. Now, unlike our last number, this film isn't so much about the horrors of lab experimentation, but instead about the cruelty of man towards the animal kingdom. Yep, just as depressing. The movie delves into the rabbits' plight, whether through the dangers of snares, hawks, cats, and dogs, as well as the chemical and mechanical weapons of human beings. The scariest part of this movie, however, lies somewhere between the bloody General Woundwort and the Black Rabbit of Inal, aka the rabbit's version of the Grim Reaper. Watership Down, guys. Fun for the whole family. Coming in at 3, Lily Cat. Released back in 1987, this animated horror follows an expendable crew of a corporate space vessel that must stop a murderous, shape-shifting alien organism that somehow got on board. Sound familiar? However, the alien monster is not the only trouble on board. Lily Cat is essentially the result of combining Alien, The Thing, and 2001: A Space Odyssey into one giant fucked up pot. Of course, it's far less serious than those films. Saying that, it's far less serious than any of the films mentioned on our list, yet that does not diminish the horror housed within. Cats can get up to a whole lot in space, something we quickly find out in the sci-fi horror fantasy. Lily Cat is essentially an insane cat and mouse game between the crew and a malevolent entity that are wreaking havoc throughout the ship. The gore factor in this film is dialed up to 10, with it vastly outweighing the scare factor, something that would definitely traumatize any poor child that might stumble across this bizarre film. You have been warned. Coming in at 2, Soul Station. The most recent movie on our list, Soul Station, was released in 2016 and follows several groups of people trying to survive a zombie pandemic that unleashes itself in downtown Seoul. Now, if you're familiar with Train to Busan, you will very much appreciate this spiritual prequel, and while the medium may have changed, the fear factor is just as prevalent. The film takes place in, of course, Seoul Station, where it appears that a homeless man is patient zero of the zombie outbreak, resulting in waves after waves of flesh-eating zombies, sprinting after our characters. Now, Busan was a more brash spectacle. Soul Station is more downbeat, instead focusing on the desolate souls trapped in life's pandemic. Now, not only that, but there is also a nice dusting of social realism to go alongside all the blood and gore, and the film's conclusion is utterly nasty. Finally, coming in at number 1, Berserk, The Golden Age Arc 3, The Advent. Released in 2013, this animated film follows Berserk 2. A year has passed since Guts parted ways with Griffith. The Band of the Hawks is plotting a rescue mission to save Griffith, who is confined to prison. Now, although the anime adaptation pales in comparison to the source material, the film is still worthy of your attention. This installment is the third and final chapter in the Golden Age arc, meaning you might have to do your research prior to going in, but once you reach this installment, hold on, because it is a bumpy ride, that's for sure. Berserk: The Golden Age Arc 3, The Advent, finds the once unbeatable Principal Griffith utterly broken and without control of his limbs after a year of severe torture in a dungeon. He then makes the very brutal decision to take his own life, which is a tough enough watch. There is far more to come, believe me. The band of Hawk is drawn into another dimension during a solar eclipse, resulting in them coming face to face with archdemons known as the God Hand. What ensues are nightmare-inducing sequences, with one in particular that will haunt many veteran horror lovers, and that's saying something. Coming in at 5, City of Rot.
Check the water supply for worms? I don't drink water.
Released in 2006 and directed by Frank Sudol, City of Rot follows an old man who is desperately losing his mind while searching for a new pair of shoes. Yeah, that is the plot. He's forced to wander the City of Rot, saturated with thousands and thousands of rotting zombies, driven to feed the blood-hungry worms residing in their skulls. Yum. The film takes place a year after the Earth's water supply was infected by parasites called rotworms, with their eggs transmitting via raindrops and spreading rapidly across the globe. They of course feast on human flesh and turn their victims into mindless zombies. It's a classic. During this time, our old man, Fred, is on the quest for a pair of comfortable slippers. That's his goal. Honestly, respect. As zombie films go, City of Rot is one of the best, and the goriest, and on top of that, it's 2D limited animation. From start to finish, the blood does not let up, and is brought to us by Frank Sudol. That's right, he's the director, producer, actor, writer, composer, and cinematographer. What a guy. And although filmmaking is a collaborative job, Frank has proven that a one-man army is just as powerful when making an enjoyable zombie film. Coming in at 4, Vampire Hunter D, Bloodlust.
One imperfect man battles the darkness alone.
Released back in 2000 and directed by Yoshiaki Kawajiri, Vampire Hunter D follows a young girl who was abducted by a vampire, and a legendary bounty hunter is hired to find her and bring her back. Now, I should start by saying that this is a truly gorgeous film, and is based on the series of fantasy sci-fi novels of the same name. Vampire Hunter D is part spaghetti western, part gothic vampire story, part romance. Yeah, it's confusing. But it's ridiculously stylish, especially for a film coming out in the early 2000s. It's filled to the brim with gore and bloodshed, and is set in a post-apocalyptic world where humans rule the day and vampires rule the night. So when a vampire noble kidnaps the daughter of a rich family, the family decide, in order to avoid their own being turned, to hire vampire hunters to rescue her. Now, the story can get a little convoluted at times, but don't let this put you off. Visually, the film flourishes and is rich with beautiful characters. Plus, on top of that, the grisly horror elements are enough to keep any viewer glued to their screen, and is the perfect entry for anyone looking to get into anime. Coming in at 3, Shoujo Tsubaki. Sorry if I butchered that. Also known as Midori, this 1992 animation follows a little orphan girl who joins a freak show circus troupe whose members rape and abuse her. She then finds a glimmer of hope in the enigmatic magician who joins the group. Yeah, that's the plot, so you can see why this would be a tough horror to get through, and it truly is. Midori begins as a sweet, innocent girl who is making the most of her life, but when her mother falls ill, that's when she is forced to drop out of school and join the circus. Now, the events that unfold are truly tragic, and have you connecting with and sympathizing with the main character, who is pretty much dragged through a living hell. And as a viewer, you are forced to watch on, with you desperately wanting to help but unable to do so. Now, it's not necessarily gory, but certainly more emotionally draining than all of our numbers combined, and that's saying something. Watching a young girl's life go from normal and innocent to tragic and horrific is truly a tough swallow. You have been warned. Coming in at 2, Fears of the Dark.
When you are afraid, it is difficult to breathe. It is difficult to move. It is difficult to speak.
Released in 2007, Fears of the Dark is a black and white French horror anthology based solely on the topic of fear, with each story linked by a segment involving an aristocrat who unleashes his dogs on a victim. Now, this film is different from your typical horror. There are no jump scares, no outbursts of bloodshed. Instead, it is just simply unsettling and finds a way to crawl under your skin before consuming your body and soul. Yeah, it's that type of horror. but also the plot. Now the stories range from a young girl who is tortured inside and outside of her nightmares, and a narration set to computer animated shapes. All are unique yet as frightening as the last, ranging from bone-chilling to flat-out terrifying. Some are animated by hand and others by computer, but all are black and white, making the film at times seem more like an experimental horror exercise than a horror movie. And finally, coming in at number 1, Perfect Blue.
はい5秒前4、3、2
Released back in 1997 and directed by Satoshi Kon, Perfect Blue tells the story of a retired pop singer turned actress whose sense of reality is shaken when she is stalked by an obsessed fan, and seemingly a ghost of her past. Now Mima begins as a member of a popular Japanese group called Cham, with a small but incredibly devoted fan base. However, it's the classic tale of good girl gone bad, when she decides to leave her career as the innocent girl and transition into acting, which in turn brings about her downfall. Someone begins to start stalking Mima, and paired with the intensity of her first film role, she begins to lose grip on reality. The question this film makes you ask though is Mima being stalked, or is she in fact the stalker? This is perhaps not just one of the scariest animated films, but also one of the greatest psychological horror animes ever made. It's cerebral yet disturbing. It makes you question your own reality and the people within it. It also has a truly unforgettable twist that will make you want to watch the film from the very beginning. Perfect Blue is deeply violent physically and emotionally, with more bloodshed than you would initially expect in a film like this. So forewarning, this film will linger with you and leave you with some profound psychological scars. Coming in at number 5, Demon City Shinjuku. I think that is correct. Released in 1988, Demon City Shinjuku follows a young warrior Kiyoya who must finish what his father started by battling his way through a city of demons and defeat a diabolic psychic who has opened a portal to hell. Yeah. Fun stuff. Kiyoya's father was killed by Rebi Ra in their battle for the fate of the world, and as a result the aforementioned portal to hell is made in Shinjuku, and the city becomes a literal hell on earth. It's now up to Kiyoya to fight Rebi Ra before he can turn the entire world into a hell. Now the movie isn't anything special, however it's the premise which really cements it as one of the greatest animated movies. Now the reception for the movie wasn't that great, with many claiming that the movie had only vaguely interconnected action scenes punctuated by some rather dull talkiness, marred by horrible accents. Well, shots fired. Not only that, but I quote, "The heroine is unconvincingly British, and the childish sidekick speaks with a mangled Mexican drawl." Lol. So weird. However, the film was popular enough to spark a role-playing game called the Demon City Shinjuku, and was published by Guardians of Order in 2000. Not only that, but Demon City Hunter is a series of 17 manga released in Japan that follows Kiyoya following the events of Demon City. ADV Manga published 2 of these in English, but sadly did not finish them. Coming in at number 4, Wicked City. Released all the way back in '87, Wicked City tells the story of 2 agents, a lady killer human and a voluptuous demon, who attempt to protect a signatory to a peace ceremony between the human world and the black world from radicalized demons. The film is based on Blackguard, the first in a series of 6 novels of the same name, with the film being the solo directorial debut of Yoshiaki Kawajiri, who also served as the character designer, storyboard artist, animation director, and key animator. Mad flex. The story itself takes place towards the end of the 20th century and explores the idea that the human world secretly coexists with the demon world, with the secret police force known as the Blackguard protecting the boundary. Now the film performed well, with an average rating of 67% on Rotten Tomatoes, if that means anything to anyone. Most don't trust that site. I do sometimes. Charles Solomon of the LA Times stated, "The film epitomizes the sadistic, misogynistic erotica popular in Japan," went on to compliment the director's deft cutting and camera angles. However, the juvenile story left a lot to be desired. Many even went on to compare it to Blade Runner, with the movie seemingly attempting to be the Japanese animation version of the movie, but with a Brave New World subtext, which, if you haven't read that book, get on it immediately. Aldous Huxley is a bloody god. Quote me on that. Like our previous number, the film is good, not extraordinary, but is explicit, sexually charged, and has some incredibly supernatural action storyline. What more could you ask for? Coming in at 3, Dead Space Downfall. Released in 2008, Dead Space Downfall, directed by Chuck Pattern is an animated science fiction horror and the prequel to the video game Dead Space, taking place during the events of Dead Space Extraction while the necromorphs invade the USG Ishimura after it receives the marker. The story itself follows an alien artifact identified as a possible second marker which is discovered on the planet Aegis 7. Captain Matthews of the nearby USG Ishimura sends a team to bring the artifact to the ship so they can study it. However, the crew quickly start dying in truly horrific ways, and as the situation worsens, the head of security, Alyssa Vincent, tries to find the cause of the violence and chaos. The film in turn follows the very first necromorph outbreak, and those suckers are terrifying. If you've ever played the game, you know this already. Now I should say from the off that this film's gore and violence levels are off the charts and has perhaps some of the most memorable kills in not just horror animation, but in horror in general. As you progress, it feels like you're watching both Alien and Event Horizon simultaneously, and that's saying something. The film was quite the hit and sparked a sequel called Dead Space Aftermath, which was released in 2011 alongside Dead Space 2. Coming in at 2, Gyo Tokyo Fish Attack. Yeah, the title alone is absolutely insane, I know. Released in 2012, the film follows friends Kaori, Erika and Aki who are on vacation to celebrate their upcoming graduation, when suddenly an infestation of mysterious walking fish forces them to reevaluate everything they care about in order to stay alive. The film itself is based off a manga simply called Gyo, also known as Fish Ghastly Squirming. Amazing, which ran from 2001 to 2002, but back to the film. I should say from the off that this film is 1 hour and 10 minutes long, which is already a slight red flag, but hear me out. Gyo Tokyo Fish Attack is a film that folks either love or hate based simply on if you read the original manga or not, with many upset that the film deviated away slightly from the original story yet still managed to hold on to the horror elements with a parasitic bioweapon running loose in Japan. The premise itself demands very little thought and is basically just another zombie apocalypse movie and is a horror just to be a horror. However, at times it seems it's not quite sure what it's trying to be, beginning as a slasher, then transitioning into a siege film, and then finally, mad scientist. It's all over the place, but for the portion of people that like this movie, that is why it's so good. It's a genre riff that keeps you coming back for more. It's fun, bloody, and a damn good time, which is exactly what you want when entering a film about killer fish that can walk. Right? Finally coming in at number 1, Dante's Inferno, an animated epic. Released in 2010 and directed by 7 people, yeah, 7. Dante's Inferno, an animated epic, tells the story of Dante as he journeys through the 9 circles of hell, aka my domain. Limbo, gluttony, greed, anger, heresy, violence, fraud, and treachery, in search of his true love, Beatrice. So sweet. The movie even has Mark Hamill as one of the voices, which is pretty damn cool. Now, the film kicks off with Dante returning home from the crusade to find that his father is dead and his servants slain, with his dying wife turning into a spirit. Sad times. However, as she starts to ascend to heaven, Lucifer, that bastard, comes and snatches her away, taking her to the depths of hell, forcing Dante to pursue the 9 circles. What makes this movie interesting is that 4 animation studios, and like I said 7 directors, made Dante's Inferno, which yes leads to some animation inconsistencies, however it plays out beautifully and is a spectacular thing to watch, especially as Dante moves through each layer, with each one having a drastically unique appearance. One of the companies behind the animation film was Film Roman, who also animated Dead Space Downfall, so you know this movie is legit. And as I stated before, the movie is separated into several parts, with each chapter animated with a different style. Dante is depicted with differing hair length, body proportions, and even armor. I'm kind of into that though. The film was well received, with Anime News Network even gifting it with an overall rating of B-. Not too shabby. High School Lucy would have loved that shit, but High School Lucy got D's. But hey, I graduated university, so I got a degree. Come for me.